happy Friday. Doesn't mean anything for real estate agents. We go to work on the weekends and at night, so it's not really that great. But for everyone else, weekend's coming. I just saw a house in my neighborhood go for like $200,000 more than any other house ever did. I just don't know if I want to shake the people's hand that bought it or ask what they were thinking, but whatever. Just wanted to go over. Last week we had Austin on and it was fun, and getting feedback from everybody. I know that I need to let Austin talk a little more, and that's what I plan to do today. But there's so much going on and there's so much back and forth, and I like it. And so we're just gonna go over what the settlement says, or the FAQs. I think we'll both have fun with that, and that's gonna be it. So what I'm going to do is I have to check and see if things are working real quick. So that's what I'm doing now. Oh yeah, we're on. Now I got to turn the volume off on this one. Oh, it's off. Okay, good. All right. So now I'm good with everything. I'm going to bring Austin in, and then we're going to get to it. So here we go. Austin, here you are. Hello.
Hello. Round two.
Hey, nice to see you. Nice to see you
as well. Look, we did it right this time. Everybody's here and ready to go.
Yes. And no one died over the past week of the settlement. Not one person.
We're all still here.
I don't know. I think I'm personally more happy that it's just kind of over. It's a relief. I don't know what somebody compared it to do you remember Y2K? Are you?
Not quite. No.
Okay.
Yeah, no, not quite.
There was this idea that everything was just going to die on the first day of 2000 because the computers hadn't been put a number.
Oh yeah, I did hear about that. Yeah.
Yes, and so so basically after that I stopped celebrating New Year's Eve because that last one ruined it. And it's been 24 years. I guess I could let it go, but I haven't so far. So I'm going to switch to here. Whoa, and then I'm going to switch to here. Oh, but I got to do this first. Let me get over. I'm going to get to the settlement.
There we go. The good stuff.
Yes. All right, now I got to get back to here. Okay, so here you and I are on the side, and there's the settlement.
Yeah.
I'm going to go switch over to where I can read it better, but you stay there.
Yep. All right, I won't do it. Yeah, that'll be good. Okay.
So, I've got my numbers. If you want to jump in on one like that I didn't tell you about, it's totally cool. And then we'll just get after it. When are you trying to get out of here, Austin, in 15 minutes?
I think we could do like an hour today. If we do an hour, we should be good. Yep.
Okay. So here we go. Number one, why did NAR enter into this settlement? It says they had two goals: secure release of liability for many of our members as possible, and preserve the choices consumers have regarding real estate services and compensation. So according to them, it says it achieved both of those goals and provided a path to move forward and continue our work to preserve, protect, and advance the right to real property for all. So
yeah,
what do you have to say about that?
I think it did. There were a lot of folks, both on the real estate side and on the consumer side, that I think really wanted to get past all this. I believe the initial lawsuit started coming through, I think, 2017 or 2018, if I recall.
Mm-hmm.
So I think putting all of this in place and putting it together really does allow for everyone to kind of move forward. And hey, we've got, maybe a new set of rules that some of us like or don't like, but we do have a place now, a foundation to rebuild from and start moving forward. And it's not hanging over our heads anymore. There's no more. We got our final product ish. I'm sure it's going to change again in the future with more lawsuits, but for the time being, we have at least a platform to build from. So I think it did exactly that. Yeah.
And so what do you think about the last part? It says, continue our work to preserve, protect, and advance the right to real property for all. Do you feel that people don't have the right to real property in 2024?
I mean, they do. I think that there are a lot of things, again, that have just been put in place and maybe some bad practices over the years that I think this really just makes it while still gray, a little bit more definable of like, hey, what we can do, what we shouldn't do, why we should do things. I think there's some really good practices that came out of this, like you not telling buyers that your services were free. I think that's a good thing that came out of this. And I think it helped give people a better idea of what exactly they're getting into in their pursuit of property rights.
I'm just a little bit confused as to preserving, protecting, and advancing the right to real property for all. It seems like that's not really I guess, is that what NAR's job is?
That's what NAR's job is. I mean, I think some of those problems were, hey, if you would like to use a realtor as opposed to just a real estate agent, realtors have additional rules and a code of ethics that all of them follow that is beyond that of a traditional real estate agent. But yeah, I think there were a lot of fundamental problems. If a buyer or if a seller came through, wanted to list their home, and they interviewed 3 different agents, and all three agents said, "Hey, my fee to list is 6%," it kind of maybe prevented people from really thinking of all the different ways they could get into or get out of their home. So I think this opens up more doors than it does close.
Okay, you ready to move to number 2?
Let's do it.
The key terms of the agreement. Release of liability. I'm just going to go over the high points. Release of liability.
Yep.
Compensation offers moved off of the MLS. Written agreements for the ML participants acting for buyers. A settlement payment. And the National Association of Realtors continues to deny any wrongdoing.
Right.
So they settled, but they said that they didn't do anything wrong.
Right. And I think that kind of ties back into one a little bit in that, hey, we may or may not have done anything wrong. However, here are the rules that we can make sure we can implement and have in place so that there's no potential wrongdoing going forward. And we can all move forward with, hey, it's almost like it was no, we didn't do this, and we're definitely not going to do this in the future, is I think a lot of what this is.
Was there ever a thought in your mind that they would ever say, oh, you know what? Hey, we're guilty. You got us.
No chance. 0 chance.
Do you care about the settlement payment in any way?
The litigation part of it and the costs and the big monies and all of those things, it's probably a little bit above my pay grade and how all of that's going to work and how all of that's going to shake out. Again, I want to be glass half full, and that it's going to provide, again, more opportunities, and maybe some old practices are no longer going to exist. Maybe some old companies may not be around, and some new ones will come out of it. We don't know, but I think overall it's going to be good. But yeah, that's a big number. It's 418 million. Is that right? 418.
Yeah. It says release of liability. That was the first thing. If that were true, then how come there's lawsuits that have started again?
I think the lawsuits are coming from the other side now. So there's
one though from this company called Homey in Denver.
Yeah. So I think this one was initially from the consumers, right? Hey, consumers weren't happy with NAR. Now this is the other end. Brokers are not happy.
To me, the Homey one looks. Do you remember like the Rex lawsuit that was out of Texas, and that company like fought until they went out of business. It still kept the lawsuit, which whatever. So let's get into the things that like I think you and I would see mostly in our daily business. One, compensation offers moved off of the MLS. And I want to read this because it's fascinating. So it says NAR has agreed to put in place a new rule prohibiting offers of compensation on an MLS. Offers of compensation could continue to be an option consumers can pursue off MLS through negotiation and consultation with real estate professionals. And sellers can offer buyer concessions on an MLS, for example, concessions for buyer closing costs. This change will go into effect August 17th. So they said, okay, you can no longer publish. I'm just making sure you can no longer publish the offer of compensation on the MLS.
Right.
Yeah. And so what has that done in practice for me? Not much, to be honest. Now, as I was saying last week, Austin, like my business really wasn't set up in a way that was going to like cause an issue. And I found myself more confused by what people were doing or what people have been said to have been doing than what I was doing.
Right.
Yeah. So this particular issue to me, you've moved it off the MLS, okay, great. I mean, in I know you're thinking a little bit differently about this, but in my situation, if I have a buyer's agency agreement with my buyer and my buyer says, I'm going to need help buying a house, if the seller's not offering compensation, which I think they're going to go with concessions, I apologize, then we're not buying that house.
We still could, right? We're just not physically putting the commissions.
That's exactly what I'm saying is, it doesn't really change anything for me. If I talk to the agent in advance and I said, are they open to, concessions, and they say no, I can still even write an offer with my commission in it if I want to, and let the seller decide whether or not they're going to take it or not.
Correct.
So, it doesn't mean anything to me either way. I saw you got into a dust up earlier in the week, where somebody was saying that they were upset because agents were calling about asking what the commission or what the compensation or what the concession would be before showing a house. And I didn't have an opinion on that, but you seem to have a strong one that you thought that was going against maybe the spirit of the rules, or what was your thinking?
Absolutely, especially with the written agreements in place now.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless on whether or not there is an offer of compensation directly from the listing agent, it doesn't really change anything. You have your written agreement in place with your buyer, and whatever amount that you agree to, whether it's 3%, 10%, a flat fee, whatever that amount. I mean, it's already been pre-established and it's in writing. It doesn't really matter in terms of that relationship with your buyer. Now, you can get into the weeds with that, and when you start asking questions and reaching out, I think it's more of a negotiation and leveraging tactic. If the listing agent says, hey, we're offering 3%, well, I'm only collecting, let's say, 10,000 from my buyer. I know there's 3% of wiggle room right off the top, and maybe we can start on negotiations down from there. So I wouldn't ever steer a buyer away from a property because they are or are not offering compensation. Like you said, it's all negotiated in the contract one way, shape, or form. Buyer loves it. My job is to help that buyer buy that home. So I think this is a great thing. I think this changes more for the larger brokerages that were maybe dependent on collecting 3% regardless, because we just knew that's what listing agents were offering. I think a lot of those business models are going to have a really difficult time sustaining their business model, not being guaranteed a 3% on the receiving end of that.
Well, I don't know. Like in our market, some of the bigger brokerages have decided that they are not paying commission in any way to the buyer. And so if you write an agreement, we had something that's been created by our board, that's the cooperating compensation agreement, which just says this is what they're paying, but you have to ask for it. And I don't understand the law enough to know what these large brokerages are trying to get out from underneath. But it brings up a weird situation in my market where, as a broker, you take in the money and you pay your agent. Just that's how it is in my market. So the agent never gets paid. At the closing, the check doesn't go to the agent. It goes to the brokerage, and then the brokerage pays out to the agent. And I'm quite positive that there's something in that arrangement that's causing the problems for this, where they want nothing to do with it, even on the listing side. So it's not really cooperative compensation at that point. So I haven't figured out what's going on behind that. But there's talk that the form itself will just go by the wayside in January. But it doesn't matter because, again, I can write an offer with my commission in it.
You can, right?
At the time of the offer. And that really does, to me, to me, that's fine. So I'm not that fired up about this particular issue. The thing is the compensation offer moved off of MLS. It's a convenience factor. And what I would want to share with you that I'm seeing in my market is and a very odd thing, and that is they're going to take the MLS, the one that I'm a part of, and it's a pretty large one, and they're going to make them the enforcement mechanism for everything, which is very odd. They have traditionally been very easy to work with. If you do make an error on a listing and just say, look, I made an error and it was an honest mistake, they'd say, hey, that's cool, just fix it and we'll go from there. But I don't know, I believe it's like California or somebody, they're fining like thousands of dollars if you make the first mistake to put something in there. And I don't know that the MLS has ever been built as an enforcement mechanism. And I wonder how that goes forward in practice. Are you seeing the same thing down there? I know that your MLS isn't owned by the Realtor Association, the local board.
Yeah. So I think they're a little bit more, they lean more on your side than they do California side. So we've got some policies in place for the offers of compensation on the MLS. You get warning, fine, and then they bring you in and have a conversation. Just on the offers of compensation. The written agreements, they've told us we all have to have a written agreement, but there's no enforcement policies on it.
It's so strange
to do it.
It's so strange to me because to me, the way they would have to know that you're like, first of all, they'd have to know who the buyer is you're working with.
Correct.
So they would have to sit there and wait until you went through showing time in our market, which is owned by Zillow. To find, then they'd say like, oh, you showed a house on this day at this time. We have to see the buyer's agency agreement for that particular showing. And for me, one of the ways, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. If I have somebody that wants to see a house and they're not ready to commit to me as an agent, I'm pretty okay with just writing up a buyer's agency agreement for one house.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I don't see where that's going to be a problem either. It seems like some of these concerns kind of answered themselves immediately when it went into effect. And so I just know that I have to have I just know that I have to have a buyer's agency. Now, if somebody says, I'm not going to sign anything with you, I'm not signing any paperwork at any at all, then unfortunately, I just don't get to work with that person.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen online that these ridiculous people are saying, well, we'll just forge the signatures and then it won't matter.
All those. Yeah. I don't know that I'm going to be forging any signatures on anything.
What in the world kind of thought is that? Like,
we won't be doing that.
No. So,
the MLS is designed for listings. It's not designed for buyers unless we're going to change the name around a little bit and change some letters. I mean, there's no real way they're going to be able to capture all of the different buyers and the agents and who they're working with. Yeah, there's no way. There's no chance.
It's so to me, like in the long run, Austin, it makes me feel like we've seen the DOJ says they might come back and revisit the agreement.
Yep.
I suspect that that's based on a political affiliation more than anything else. I think a different administration, it might not show up all of a sudden.
Right. Yeah.
I also feel like this is a setup for the MLSs.
I do too. Yeah, I do too.
They're literally putting these people on it's not wiffle ball, but it's that one. They're just putting the ball on a tee in golf. They're literally put it right on the tee and just let them hit it right out of the park. And if I were an MLS, I'd have to be nervous because you're making me do these things I'm not familiar with.
And they are. They're trying to do whatever they can to limit liability as well. Yeah, I think they know what's coming down the pipe.
Okay, so then I'm going to jump all the way to 19.
19.
Yeah. Do you have yours called up? Because maybe it might be hard to read on your end from.
It's a little bit hard. I'm trusting you.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So here it is. It says, what MLS policies have changed? And so it says the policy changes agreed to by NAR leadership were reviewed and updated with the changes and outlined below. And even like, I'm the kind of person that makes me laugh when they say they agreed to the changes were agreed to by NAR leadership. It's like, well, it wouldn't have mattered if you didn't agree to them because you really didn't have a choice.
Right.
So one, it says eliminate and prohibit any requirement of offers of compensation on the MLS, and we talked to that. Retain and define cooperation for MLS participation. We did not talk about that. Let me get through them, and we'll go back to it. Eliminate and prohibit MLS participants, subscribers, and sellers from making any offers of compensation on an MLS to buyer brokers or other buyer representatives. Require an MLS to eliminate all broker compensation fields and compensation information on an MLS. So that's an interesting one. Require an MLS to not create, facilitate, or support any non-MLS mechanism, including by providing listing information to an internet aggregator's website for such purpose, for participants, subscribers, or sellers to make offers of compensation to buyer brokers or other buyer representatives. Yep. Prohibit the use of the MLS data or data feeds to directly or indirectly establish or maintain a platform of offers of compensation from multiple brokers or other buyer representation. Such use may result with an MLS terminating the participants' access to any MLS data and data feeds. Reinforce that MLS participants and subscribers must not, and MLSs must not enable the ability to filter out or restrict MLS listings that are communicated to customers or clients based on the existence or level of compensation offered to the cooperating broker or the name of the brokerage or agent. We'll go back to that one. Require compensation disclosures to sellers and prospective sellers and buyers. And then require MLS participants to work with a buyer to enter into a written agreement with buyer prior to touring a home. So we'll go straight up to the top. Retain and define cooperation for MLS participation. One of the weird things in Michigan, the lawsuit in Michigan that was just filed against the Association of Realtors, is number one, they allege that the membership to the National Association was required to be a part of the MLS. And then when they got sued, when NAR got sued, then it went and you had to be a member of the local boards, which are controlled by the National Association of Realtors. So nothing really changed in fact. And then what they said to that also is, you're making us follow rules to participate in the MLS that people that have access to the MLS that aren't a part of NAR, they have the ability to use the MLS. They have less restrictions on it than we do, and we're a member of the board, and that to me makes no sense. And it to me also makes no sense. Do you have any thoughts on that? Craziness?
I mean, I feel like that could all just very easily be summarized in just one line. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think they made a whole bunch of different bullet points for no reason. I mean, I think the long story short, and this one maybe is one of the more boring words, but like, yeah, don't put offers of compensation on the MLS, and don't put it on your IDX feeds. Don't syndicate it out. If you want to put it on your website, rock and roll. But I mean, and the other, I think the important change, cooperation. So with ours, we went to concessions.
Yeah.
Concessions aren't offered to an agent. Concessions are offered to a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how the buyer chooses to use those concessions, which can be used towards real estate compensation, is fine.
Sure.
But this is just really, hey, why don't we just gear this towards buyers? We're not making offers of compensation to agents. Let's put concessions on there. Let's market directly to buyers. Mm-hmm. It alleviates a lot of that. Maybe? No? What do you think? So
it says require compensation disclosures to sellers and prospective sellers and buyers. Okay. My association has accomplished that by producing the cooperative compensation disclosure. I mean, it says compensation and disclosure within the document, and it's a helpful way of saying, look, this is what you have agreed to pay. And to me, how do you get around that by just writing your offer and putting it in your offer? It just seems to me like what is being required based on this MLS policy versus what is going on in practice or will go on in practice. It seems like those are not aligned. And I don't know if that means, does that mean we're going to forget this in 4 months or 5 months, or how this is going to shake out, because I guess in my opinion, technically you could say you're in violation of the agreement right there when you don't have an offer of a disclosure of compensation to the people involved. And then you get stuck in this other case of is a prospective, what is the relationship between the agent and the quote unquote prospective seller and buyer? And like we go back to agency. Under what agency am I working? Am I under no agency agreement? Am I under transaction brokerage? What is the real life effect of a prospective quote unquote seller and buyer? That was one of the things that's concerning to me.
So this is how I think that it looks like in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, do you guys use title companies where you are?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the title company as is typically gets a copy of the listing agreement, the compensation agreement, because they need to know where the funds are going and how they're going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Historically, they don't ever really need the buyer representation agreement. In some cases, maybe, but
no. And in fact, we only used to send them the listing just to help them find the tax records to get started on the property. They pulled up everything. And as far as the compensation on ours, it's like, you just give them what it is. They wouldn't need a form to know what it is on both sides, because if there was ever not a meeting of the minds on that, then they would back out of that immediately and want the two brokers to have at it and figure out what the situation was.
Yeah. I think going forward, the title companies will have copies of that listing agreement, the compensation agreement, and instead of like the 3% or whatever offer us, it'll be, I guess there'll be more zeros on there as we progress. And then I think they will also be collecting copies of the written agreements between the buyer and the buyer's agent. And I also believe that lenders are going to be wanting to take a look at those 3 documents as well, just to know where the money's going, how it's going, where it's going to. I think the lenders may be a little bit slower to incorporate all of that. I do know some of them are getting the written agreements already and the compensation agreements, but there may be some cases where they even ask for a listing agreement, and that way they just know where everything's documented. So I think that covers everybody in the transaction. We know where the money's going, who's paying for what line items are where. Those 3 documents, I mean, they really spell out everything as to where the funds are going. So I think
it's going to be weird because of the buyer compensation is now going to be on the statement, which I don't care. I'm not ashamed of what I make or what I don't make, but there is, I mean, even on a reasonably priced house, an average priced home in the United States, there is a lot of, if the seller's paying a concession versus a buyer's coming to the listing paying on their end, there's a significant amount of difference, and it's enough to throw somebody out of a deal. And it's going to be real interesting to see if that happens. With basically nothing changing in real life except for you moved one number on that wasn't on a piece of paper to the piece of paper. It's
our settlement statements do have. So do your settlement statements have one that breaks out the commissions earned? Does it split it?
Historically in St. Louis, on the listing agreement, the listing paperwork, the HUD statement would have the commissions paid. There would be none on the buyer's paperwork ever.
Okay, now so we do have that here on ours. Yep, so we do have that on ours. So it's actually broken down. You'll have the amount that got paid to the agent representing the buyer and then to the agent representing the seller. It is broken up on our settlement statements.
So then we get into the situation where that says the required MLS not to create, facilitate, or support any non-MLS mechanism for participants, subscribers, or sellers to make offers of compensation to buyer brokers or other buyer representatives. They've said that if you have a website that isn't showing the listing, but you show compensation for that, it would be fine. My argument would be, I don't really need to go to a website. I can literally just ask the other agent what they're doing. And if they don't want to tell me, that's fine too. It's weird. It's like, Austin, it's like they're saying, hey man, you just can't put it on the MLS, even though that the internet is like by far the easiest way to communicate these days. You're going to have to use smoke signals in your local market. It's basically, to me, a restriction on communication that isn't really necessary in today's world.
It's not the commissions when they were published on the MLS. That typically wasn't done on the consumer side. I know sometimes it did get syndicated out depending on where they put it.
But I would put forward this. I wouldn't care if it was public information or was not.
I think that's all the reason for that is so that buyers can feel like they can negotiate on the front end.
Yeah. The narrative is that let me do the narrative and you can fix it for me, because I've never really understood. The narrative is that somehow buyers and sellers were not aware that they were able to negotiate every single part of a real estate deal. Am I wrong on that one?
I think buyers thought their services were free. So why even bother asking a question if it's free? I don't need to ask anything. It's free.
It's fascinating to me because to me, it's like they ran to the courts and said, well, we didn't know any of this stuff. And it's like, well, it's all in the agreements. And you negotiate with people every day in every walk of your life, every part of your life. And it's just shocking to me that that people were like that. But I believe it based on the agents that I've met in my career. It wouldn't surprise me if things like that happen now.
So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Buyers getting through, they're writing up an offer, they're interested in a home.
Yeah.
What document before the 17th date, what document would a buyer sign stating that they're going to get, that the agent is going to get compensation from another source?
Let me just answer it the way I can. I might not have the question right. With mine, every buyer agent, every time I worked as a buyer's agent for someone, at the moment of like, not first contact, but like, hey, do you really want to work with me? And do I want to work with you? We put together a buyer's agency agreement. And it was, in my place, it's an exclusive buyer's agency agreement. Okay. And that just laid out what am I required to do to earn a commission? It laid out every single thing.
Yep. Did that agreement have a percentage or an amount that you were going to be paid? Whether it be a percentage.
Not only did it had many different boxes. You could do a percentage, you could do amount, you could do a bonus, you could do, if you bought a house within X amount of days, there was a bonus. What people started to do in my market that irritated me more than anything is not only did they go after commissions, but then they wanted to add fees on top of the commission paid. And I was always very uncomfortable about that. But that was just my own personal way I thought about things. I know I'm
here, but there are and there have been situations where there's actually no chance that a buyer knows how much they're being charged, because in Tennessee, an agent can collect compensation from the listing agent. They don't have to have any written agreement in place outlining what is or isn't being paid. Hey, this agent is offering 3%. I can just go ahead and take that. I don't need to disclose. I can just take that 3%. So
I would be against, just in general, I would be against anything like that happening. So this is one of those things where you feel like you saw an opportunity for this to occur, whereas I just wanted nothing to do with anything like that. So I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah. Yep. I think this makes it wide open across the U.S. Having the written agreements in place with the amount high, I think this solves a lot of problems, and it does give people the ability to negotiate that down, because there's nothing to negotiate off of free. It's free.
No. But the other problem is people think that when you're like, this is just a general thing in my business. Look, if I'm it's a weird thing, Austin, like say you want to work with somebody. Okay. Do you want to negotiate against that person? And I've always been like, well, I'll negotiate against that person. That's fine. And if I can't negotiate against that person, then I'm going to be an awful agent on their behalf if I'm trying to negotiate on their behalf as a buyer to a seller's agent, because the seller's agents most of the time are going to want to negotiate. So it's like, if you can't even negotiate up front, you probably shouldn't be hired to do the job in the first place.
I think that goes back to what we talked about not long ago. The problem with sellers and interviewing 3 different agents is they all said 6%.
Well,
so if that's the case, so I think negotiating, if anything else, it gives buyers an opportunity to interview with multiple different kinds of agents. Hey, maybe we got a full service percentage. We got a full
it's
on a flat fee, and then maybe we've got like there's going to be more options.
So, okay, let's come on to my side for a minute and just live with me here.
Oh yeah.
85% of the people that I work with, I just threw that number out, at least 3/4, at least 75%, interview one agent, and it's me. And they interview me on the basis of one of my friends, they're one of my friends, or one of my family members, they're, a friend of a friend. And that's it. They do not go and meet 3 different people.
Okay.
And if I'm in a listing situation where there's 3 other agents, I automatically, I feel like I've just always been comfortable enough with myself. You're not going to get every listing, no matter what number you put down.
Right. Yep.
I'm not going to win against certain people, and I'm okay with that. So it's, to me, again, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you, it was always this way. Why would you hire a buyer's agent if you couldn't negotiate, if you were afraid, if they were so bad at negotiating, they couldn't even negotiate their upfront fee, or they couldn't even discuss it?
Oh no, agents should be able to discuss it.
100%.
When I say an agent, when we're talking about negotiating.
Yeah. No, but what I'm saying is there's people that were so dumb. There were agents that were so dumb that they are not capable of doing the minimum, which is at least tell somebody, what your services are, who you are as a person, and what you're trying to accomplish with, that particular client. There are people that literally can't alliterate that. They're just
true. Yep.
Yeah.
So this is where, like, I could come in and say, hey, this is what I offer. This is what I do. Here's how I run comps. Here's all of the different sources that I do. I charge X number of dollars in order to do that.
Yeah.
Negotiating doesn't mean that I have to come down off my price.
No,
it just means
and that's the thing that I think is really going to screw people over is there's all these people that are going to be running around now saying, well, you only open doors, and therefore I'm going to pay you $25 to open the door. And I think agents are going to say, you know what? Buying a house kind of sucks. It's hard. It takes like years off of my life when things don't go right. For the past 3 years, I sit there, I show like 25 houses to these people. Maybe I'm going to raise my rates. And then wouldn't that be ironic that the very rules they put in place to try and lower total compensation, make things cheaper, turns out to be an absolute boondoggle and actually goes the wrong direction?
I mean, anything's possible.
I know.
I don't see that happening at all, but
I understand that. I don't know that it would. But just on a side industry, we're on Twitter or X. We see people say, well, they need to build small houses, okay? Because people want small, cheap houses, right? There's no affordability. So the big home builders should just start instantly changing over to build small houses for people to buy. And they do not understand that national home builders don't give a rip about affordable houses. They want to make the most amount of profit possible on the land that they purchased. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the idea that they're going to sit there and say, oh, well, you know what? Because somebody wants an affordable house, I can build a McMansion, and a few people may not be able to buy the McMansion, but I'm still going to be better off than building a neighborhood of small houses that are, lower priced and lower margin. And I think that speaks to the idea of a market that exists. And I think that real estate is the same thing. It's a market. It will adjust over time.
Yep.
And just like an attorney's wages, You can go and find somebody for cheap. You can go and find somebody for a lot. More power to you.
Yeah,
So,
that's true. 100%.
You know, there's no difference here. So I'm going to move on unless there's anything else. The only thing I would say is there's a narrative that says that we all sat around as agents and only looked for high compensation properties, and we somehow filtered those out and we sent only those to our buyers. That did not happen in my office. I don't even.
That's not happened. Yeah, no, I can say I have never personally seen an agent that has filtered out anything by compensation and sent home that way.
It's fine that they've got a faulty motive for something that's not.
They haven't say it though, but I haven't personally seen it.
100%, and I'm with you there. Could there be somebody? Sure. Was it somebody that I knew? No. Yeah. Let's see. So now I got number 27. Why was prohibiting the publication of compensation offers on an MLS part of the settlement? And so it says, while NAR has long maintained, and we continue to believe that cooperative compensation and NAR's current policies are good things to benefit buyers and sellers, we also acknowledge that continuing to litigate would have hurt members and their small businesses. So they have agreed to put in place a new rule prohibiting offers of compensation on an MLS. This is consistent with NAR's long maintained position that prohibiting all offers of cooperative compensation entirely would harm consumers and be inconsistent with real estate laws in many states that authorize them. We believe this agreement provides a path forward for our industry and NAR. I would just say that it's fascinating to me. This to me seems like an acknowledgement by NAR that they couldn't stay in business while they were getting sued. And so they had to pretty much agree with whatever anybody put forth.
It was getting to that point. I think it was 7 years? Yeah. 7 years. Yeah.
And it says, it says it would have hurt members and their small businesses. Small business line is pretty much a crock. I probably run a micro business. The small businesses, the guys that they were protecting were billion-dollar outfits.
Yep.
There's no small business about that.
No.
And it, to me, to say that it would have hurt members is an acknowledgement that they believe that they are the entire real estate industry. That seems wrong to me.
Yeah.
It seems like it's going to be a problem in the future.
I think so too. Yep.
So then we go to 49.
49. We're skipping a bunch. Yep, that's good.
I just saw some words that were interesting to me because I was curious about this. This is a fascinating one. 49 is, what is NAR's policy on steering buyers based on the amount of broker compensation? It says under the Code of Ethics, steering buyers based on the amount of compensation is prohibited. Realtors must pledge themselves to protect and promote the interests of their client, putting their client's best interests forward over their own. A realtor must never put broker compensation before their client's interests. It says realtors must be honest and truthful in their real estate communications and must not exaggerate, misrepresent, or conceal pertinent facts related to the transaction, including facts about broker commissions.
Yep.
And then it says if a realtor does anything to put their own interests or another broker's compensation before their client's interest, they're violating this primary code of ethics and potentially violating the broker's fiduciary duties to their client. And then it says, depending on the broker-buyer relationship and state law, added 52924.
Yep. This is the most interesting one.
It is to me. I'm glad. So let me just start by saying, to me, what the definition of steering means comes into play dramatically, because my example to you is I could literally have a buyer that says, hey, John, if they're not offering X on a seller compensation or seller concessions, do not show me the property. I do not want it, which would be further from what I used to do. That'd be actually a worse position than I used to have. My old position is here's the commissions for everything. My buyer's agency agreement says this. Whatever you want to do, I'm open to show any property that you want to see. I can't do it for free, and I'm not ashamed. So to me, this goes even further in a negative way to me.
Okay. Have you ever had a client tell you, I don't want to see this property if they're not offering compensation?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
And what has historically been your response to that?
I mean, like now this is me.
Yeah.
I've had buyers look at pictures online and say, I don't like the color of the garage door. I don't want to look at that property. Okay. Yep. Now look, you could paint the garage door.
Yeah.
All right. So you think I'm going to make a distinction between that and they're offering this and I don't want to see the property for that reason? Like, is it my job to try to make that differentiation? It doesn't make any sense to me. Why argue? Why would you argue that? You know?
See, okay, this is how I viewed the steering. Okay, because it makes sense in some aspects. If like, hey, this person isn't offering anything, then I don't want to see it. But what's going to change going forward is that it sounds like sellers are probably going to be more apt to just, hey, bring it with your offer. So we're not actually going to know what is or isn't being offered. So
I think that's fair. In the end of the day, it's probably true down the road. That's going to be the case.
That's going to be the case. So this is how I plan on doing mine. And maybe I'm a little bit different. But when I introduce my clients to a lender, we get pre-approved. We talk through that entire, we're going to assume they need more money. We're going to go through the process. We're going to say, hey, worst case scenario, if we find a property and no offers of compensation are available, here's your cash to close figure. Obviously, we can ask for concessions on any property given the requirements and the limits. If we can get a concession in the amount of X, this is going to reduce your cash to close by this amount. And this is what you'd have to bring to closing. So regardless of compensation being offered right from the listing agent, any property is a viable property with the proper negotiation, as long as you set up the proper expectations with your client up front in that cash to close range.
But here's one of the situations that may come into play now that might cause an issue for an agent is, let's say you put your offer of compensation in the offer is not accepted, but is countered, and they try and take a scalp to that concession or your commission. That might just kill the deal for your buyer, and then you get stuck in the situation that it's like, well, what is best for my buyer? It's best for my buyer that the thing closes, maybe, but not if they're under financial stress, which I can't determine myself. Right. So you really get into a spot there where you can have issues unknowingly. So there was a time where buyers couldn't even pay the closing costs. And I'll be honest with you, I think title, I just got a statement. I think they jacked the rates on title. I'm going to go around with my title company on that because there's all kinds of fees showing up there that didn't show up the last time I remember. So I wonder if in anticipation, the title companies are, it's like if you're going to cut, to me, that situation is if you're going to cut the realtor's commission, somebody else is going to jump in there and take that what they see as free money. That would be my concern. Yep. But anyway.
Well, so I've got a solution to the problem you proposed there. So you can absolutely, you can absolutely put offers of compensation inside of a purchase and sale agreement. There's nothing that technically says you can't.
Yeah.
However, I've made the business decision. I will not be making any offers of compensation inside the purchase and sale. It's just,
I understand that.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. So anything that's going to be asked is going to be asked for in a concession. What we want to do if they don't want to offer the full concession is they can counter the concessions. We eliminate that little piece of my compensation tied to the offer. Anytime an agent includes their offers of compensation, you're kind of becoming a party to the contract, and that's kind of outside of what I think makes the most sense. So I won't be putting any offers of compensation inside the purchase and sale when negotiating on behalf of a client. It'll all be done via concessions, and we negotiate the concessions.
I see.
Yep. Solves those problems, I think. Right?
I don't know. Like no offense, but I haven't run it through my mind enough to know if that will.
Yeah.
But I think don't you feel like that's part of what these larger brokers are saying, where they're saying, we're just not going to offer offers of compensation at all, and therefore not going to have a cooperative closing disclosure ahead of time, and it's just going to be done during the course of the deal? Isn't that their way of getting out of it?
Well, yeah, that's one way they're going to do it. So and when I'm writing an offer, I'll be submitting an offer, a compensation agreement with $0 on it. And then the purchase and sale is going to have whatever concessions my buyer needs in order to get that deal done. Yep. While covering all of their closing costs.
So to me, the code of ethics is used as a weapon and a shield depending on what NAR wants that day.
I agree with that. I agree with that one. Yep.
So it's like, you know, under their, I have a friend that teaches ethics at a college locally, and I always say, you know, is this ethical? And he always asks me back, like, who's ethics? Damn.
Right. Yep. Fair.
So this, to me, the speaking of steering is being done based on a false premise that agents were doing this in the first place, or that all agents were doing, you know, like a significant number of agents were doing it in the first place. You know, if you're going to be a jerk, okay, you're going to be a jerk. It's got nothing to do with the code of ethics. No amount of education is going to solve that problem. You're just a jerk. Yeah. And that's kind of at the end of the day, how this is all going to shake out is whatever rules you want to put in place are fine. The people that have always tried to follow the rules to the best of their ability will, and those that don't aren't.
Yep.
It's just the way it's going to be. So let's move on to 51. Does it address the theoretical possibility of steering? So it says, yes, in the agreement, NAR reaffirms its commitment to requiring that MLS participants must not limit the listings their clients sees because of broker compensation. Again, a faulty premise. This is written by people that must not be doing real estate to think that's occurring. It says, written buyer agreements required by NAR practice changes that will be implemented on August 17th will also outline that MLS participants may not receive compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amount of rate agreed to in the agreement with the buyer. I've already seen the workaround for that. I don't like it, and
I think that's going to get some people in trouble later down the road, because the spirit of all of this, 100%. If you agree to 1%, you're not collecting more than 1%. And they will be auditing settlement statements. And yeah, that's going to come back to bite a whole bunch of folks.
Since a broker working with a buyer cannot receive more compensation than the buyer has agreed to in that agreement, the amount of any offer of compensation is irrelevant to the buyer broker's compensation. So look, it says under these practices, they've eliminated any theoretical steering because a broker will not make more compensation by steering a buyer to a particular listing because it has a higher offer of compensation. However, it's not steering if your buyer says, I don't want a house unless it has buyer broker, unless it has a commission or compensation paid for by the seller. Now, that person may be sitting out and never buying a house because of that reason.
Yeah, I think those people saying that are less common than the agents who are steering properties towards 3%. I think what you just described in a buyer telling me, I don't want to see any houses that don't off. I don't think that ever happens. I think that happens less than 1/10 of the time.
Fascinating. I have experienced that in my own career, where it's like, you know, here's the commission on this property, and they're like, nope, let's go. There's 70 other houses available, and they are paying. Let's go see those. But
so one house is not paying and one is.
Yeah.
And we all know buyer services aren't free. So if someone's paying 3%, the price of the home is 3% higher. Why don't you have the conversation with your buyer and say, hey, well, let's go ahead and start here. We're going to take 3% off the list price as a baseline. Since they're not offering any compensation, we can adjust the offer accordingly if we want to include it in the offer, and you just go down that way.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, you've got a situation, like, to me, it was a perfect storm for this lawsuit, because you had a quote unquote, a flu that caused people to just go batshit crazy. And so, you know, it's a very hot market for sellers, right? And you can argue that the buyers it was demographics, destiny, any number of things you want to, but people were paying stupid amounts of money for houses. Okay. That is starting to go away in some places. The only thing that I see is if you know, your market changes to a buyer-led market, you will see kind of more vicious, you know, it's weird. I never liked to be vicious on the buyer side or seller side, depending on which way. I wanted people to get a fair deal, everybody around, and be happy. I just think you're going to see a different way if you've got a tremendous amount supply on the market in the future, and it will happen at least once in my lifetime again, that you'll see people coming to want to pay buyers agents to bring someone to a house, and that's somehow not steering. And where I was talking about steering as a definition is I don't know what their policy is, but if someone's offering more in concessions than someone else, it's possible or theoretical that house will sell faster.
It's theoretical, yeah. Theoretically, right? Theoretically, right? Isn't that how we started? Theoretically.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. It says, can a broker tell a potential buyer the amount of broker commissions and explain who is paying those commissions? Yep. Yes. Well, obviously, we always could.
Right.
Yeah. So it says it also requires, to the extent that such a realtor or participant will receive compensation from any sources, the agreement must specify and conspicuously disclose the amount or rate of compensation it will receive and how this amount will be determined. Well, that's fine. It was never.
I don't think that was, especially here. I think there were a lot of deals where the buyer just didn't know because there was an offer of compensation between the listing agent and the buyer broker, and that amount never really got shared until closing day. And we got a settlement statement. We see.
Well, that's online, to me, that's just bad real estating. I'll be honest with you.
It happens a lot. Yep.
And then 52, it says, can a listing broker explain to a seller that the buyer will know who is paying the commissions? Let's try and get this to where it makes sense. Can a listing broker explain to a seller that the buyer will know who is paying the commissions? Why would you not? Right. Why would that not be the case?
Yep. Yeah, that one's easy too. Yeah.
So it says Articles 2 and 12 of the Code of Ethics apply to brokers working with sellers. The listing broker should explain to her client. Oh, interesting. To her client, the benefits and costs of various types of marketing that can be done for a listing and how potential buyers might respond to such marketing, including any buyer cost of listing broker. So, well, that's not changed. Okay. But then it says added 529.24. Listing broker should inform the seller about costs the buyer will incur, how the buyer might react to those costs, and how the seller can market a house considering the buyer's cost. But a listing broker must not tell a seller that a broker will steer buyers based on the amount that a broker is compensated.
Right. Isn't that basically, hey, Mr. Seller, you don't have to offer any compensation to an agent that brings you a buyer. However, we may get if you do X. Is that what that's basically saying?
Yeah, but yes, exactly. That's what that's saying. And so we are to pretend that is not a fact. We are to take what is reality and say it's not real based on this settlement.
Listing broker should inform the seller about costs the buyer will. Correct. Yeah. We're about providing information, and you let your seller make the decision that makes the best and the most sense for them, whether or not they do or they don't want to offer, offers of compensation. And the same for the buyer, and goes back to the steering. Hey,
that's exactly, the steering thing is really tricky in this, because you may not be steering. You may just be telling a fact that you believe or an opinion that you believe. Now I'm steering. That's where it gets really dicey to me in this particular issue, because it's like in my opinion, if someone on the listing side, okay, let's say I'm representing the listing, I'm a listing broker on this one, and they come to me and say, John, I got to get this house sold in a month. Okay, I really got to get it sold. What do you think will entice a buyer?
Lower price.
Huh?
Lower price.
Lower price, combination lower price, raise the rates. That's what I think. I'm giving my professional opinion. Okay?
So you offer, in your mind, offering additional compensation to the agent buyer.
Absolutely. And by the way, we're offering different compensation. We don't know what other people in the marketplace are offering or anything like that. It just seems to me like this might be something that will get an agent off of the couch to come see this property and bring their buyer.
So you think that buyer would be more apt to send, an agent would be more apt to send their buyer to a deal if offers of compensation are higher. So agents do steer buyers to properties that offer more compensation, is what you're saying on that end.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is that steering? if a buyer, and is it a bad thing if a buyer is going to get, if they're going to get more net because somebody else offered something that another person didn't, now I'm supposed to say that's no buyer, that's a bad deal for you? It seems wrong to me. It seems like I'm supposed to be working for the buyer and I'm supposed to get them the best deal possible in the marketplace.
If the goal of your seller is to net as much as possible in the shortest time frame.
Yeah, but okay, but and this one I flipped it on you. On this one, now I'm working for the buyer that says, oh, this is being paid this is paying this. As a buyer, I'm going to have to pay less and I'm going to get more house on this one because the seller's offering a commission.
So if you and your buyer, you're representing the buyer on this one. So if you represent the buyer and you agree to a 2% commission and the house that's listed is offering a 6%, what does that conversation look like with your buyer? They're offering 6, we agreed to 2. How does that change anything? You can't take more than 2 anyway.
There you go.
So there's actually no incentive to offer additional compensation when you're listing a home.
But what I'm saying is on the seller side, now you're saying I shouldn't offer anything to anyone, and that's not an incentive to bring somebody to the property. And that's, to me, not real world. That's somebody that has assigned a framework on something that is not the way people do business in any market on any type of product. If you provide a coupon at a grocery store for a pack of soda, right now a 12 pack is $9. Yeah. If you provide a coupon that's $5 off that 12 pack, you'll sell out the entire set of soda in real world economics.
Yep.
But we're going to deny that that's true in real estate. We're going to say, oh, that doesn't exist.
Well, it's different.
More incentive to buy something doesn't exist.
The grocery store has the soda, marks it directly to the consumer. I guess in the digital world that we live in, where most properties are actually found by the buyers themselves and not the agents, why do you need to incentivize an agent when the buyer can find it?
Well, that's an interesting question too. I'm curious. Do you this is a premise that I think is fascinating, and I'm just going to explain it to you the way I do it. Okay.
Yep.
Let's say that someone wants to buy a house. Okay. They want to buy it in a certain location. Okay. Like, so let's say Kirkwood here, and it's like a little suburb, and they're all McMansions now, but it used to be a nice place. So I put everything in Kirkwood in the email that I send to them. And I send them automated emails that say, here is everything in Kirkwood. Okay. Within this price range.
Yep.
Okay. Some people would argue that I'm not doing my job because I'm not somehow curating each listing I send to the person.
Yep.
Whereas I feel like you need to know everything that's going on in Kirkwood so that you can make the best decision for you and your family. Okay. To me, this is just 2 different ways of thinking, and neither one of them is wrong to me. But I know agents that will sit there and curate listings, and I'm like, who are you to think you know what's best for your client in this particular situation? I think that that's a level of hubris that I would never, ever have.
Yeah. Yep. So when you do your Kirkwood search,
Mm-hmm.
MLS,
Mm-hmm.
are you manually going through and looking at properties, or do you have just an auto search through the MLS?
I have auto search set up, and then what I do is say, look, if you want to change the amount, or if you want to change whatever you want to change, let's change it up, and we'll do it that way. Because I think you should see as much as you possibly can. And there are people out there, Austin, that will curate the listings and keep the people from seeing properties that they otherwise might have been interested in. And
yeah.
And to me, it's wrong. To me, that's wrong as an agent.
I agree with you.
But you get, unfortunately, this blowback that says, well, you're not doing anything for your clients. And I'm like, showing them everything available is much better than hiding stuff from them.
Yep. I don't know. I think okay, if you're going to get in a world where you're going to motivate an agent, let's just say we have a market flip and there's just way.
Yeah. Sure.
I could understand motivating an agent that's going above and beyond and like sending mailers. Hey, I've got a buyer that's looking for this specific home in this particular street, this cold, like, we may have to incentivize an agent differently there than someone who just has like an MLS IDX feed who's just automatically sending things out. I think for 95% of consumers, you could offer the coupon, as we talked about, directly to the consumer as opposed to the agent. Unless the agent is doing something very specific to find a property, like very specific, I want to be on this street, facing this direction. I don't think there's really a whole ton of incentive to incentivize an agent when we have access to the internet.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
You can have that opinion. My concern is that I think that there is a combination of ways you can get someone into a house on the listing side, and they can be a series of incentives. And I believe that this is specifically saying one incentive is not allowed. And I think that that's contrary to economics and therefore weird. But I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I think that I find that I just feel like we're denying basic economic theory, and it's stupid. But I've got one more. Do you have time?
Yeah. I can do 15 more minutes.
Okay. And by the way, you need to email me what you're working on, because you've been absent from Twitter for the past week, and my emails are not getting answered quickly.
It's not been as quick this week. That is true. Yeah. Big project. I'll let you know.
Yeah. Let me know later. I don't want to, I hope I can be excited about it. Okay. And then it says, will this prohibition, save money for sellers or buyers? Okay. And then this is just what they wrote. As NAR has maintained throughout the litigation, nothing in NAR's current policies has increased costs for buyers or sellers. You disagree with that? Is that fair?
Let's see. As NAR maintained. I don't think cost. I think costs may increase for buyers on the title side, as you mentioned earlier, and on the lending side, I think the real estate related costs will come down.
Right. But what I'm saying is this statement says that these particular policies that we've had have increased costs for buyers or sellers. You believe that that's...
I agree with that.
You disagree with that, or you agree?
No, I don't think it's going to increase costs.
No, I'm saying in the past has increased.
Hold on. What are we saying here? Will this save money for buyers or sellers? As NAR has maintained throughout the litigation, nothing in NAR's current policies has increased costs for buyers. Okay. Yes, I think having fixed fees or standards.
You think that it has?
I think it has. Yep. And I think these changes will lower costs for buyers and sellers moving forward. Yes.
The settlement expressly provides that sellers may communicate seller concessions such as buyer closing costs via an MLS, provided that some concessions are not conditioned on the use of or payment to a buyer broker. All I know about this is I don't understand. Like, I'm done. I'm done with this. Let me try to explain.
Go back to that one. Go back to that one. That one was interesting.
Well, okay. Well, what I was going to say is, let's
read that last one there.
Which one?
The settlement expressly, and I'm a little bit old
here. It's cool. Because I have an answer to that one that I just wanted to run by you.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. I do want to talk about that one because that one is interesting.
Okay.
Go back to what we were and then come back, or what?
No, this ties into it. I was just saying I was done with this, and I was just moving to the top of the page because it was fun. I wasn't done with this point. My confusion with this whole thing is, say there's a Zillow, or say there's homes.com, and they say, you know what, agents, we know you've been abused by this system dramatically in the National Association of Realtors. Here, we're going to give you everything you want, okay, and more. Okay? The only catch is you don't have to be a part of NAR. Okay, so then all of a sudden we get into this thing is, Austin, what's an MLS? I mean, and then if NAR doesn't own it and the Department of Justice comes after NAR, then, what are we doing here? It seems like they went after NAR without the understanding that if NAR isn't around, we don't have to follow NAR's rules. We just have to now because they're part of the MLS. Homes.com is not necessarily part of the MLS. Zillow is not necessarily part of the MLS. If they say as an agent, you go ahead and put your information, don't even worry about your local MLS. You take out the MLSs, the local ones, tomorrow. So this doesn't seem like it was very smart. It's like, how like, I'm going to give you a compliment. Do you know how you're thinking positively about the future? Like you are generally upbeat and optimistic about the world in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. I am also, even though it's packaged within this, I don't know, this wrapper. I am for as frictionless of a transaction as there can possibly be. Okay.
Okay.
And I believe that if you put barriers into that transaction, you're going to increase the cost, the frustration, ruin the efficiency of the transaction. These people, I say these people because they're the white shoe lawyers, they have made a determination that the MLS as run through NAR must always be the way. And I suspect that if you believe in a frictionless, efficient method, the NAR and the MLS are not where it's going to be in the future. Don't give a damn. Nobody gives a damn about NAR or the MLS. If you're trying to buy a house, if you're a buyer, do you care about NAR? No, not even a little bit. You don't even know who they are. Don't care. Do you care about the MLS? No. You will go to any listing site possible. In fact, in my own MLS, most people send me listings from like Redfin and Zillow right now. Because you know why? It's because of the user interface. It's so much easier and so much more friendly for them. They could give a damn about the MLS. And that's where we're headed.
Indirectly to the MLS though. So the Zillow, so my personal house was sold off market. You can't go to Zillow and find my house. Zillow's only pulling most of its information from the MLS.
Oh, I understand that, but they could change that tomorrow.
So if the MLS just went bye-bye altogether,
yeah.
Unless they are the brokerage that closes on the transaction, they are never going to be able to update any information about those properties unless they're communicating with other brokerages and knowing what's going on, unless they're going to pull county records, which are always like 2.5 months late on everything.
They can have people enter the information now. As a broker, you could go on there right now and give them every single bit of information on a new listing. And you could probably pay them $10 to have it show up at the top of the page.
Possibly.
So why are we screwing with this concept of, do you understand what I'm saying? It's an old school of thinking that they've thrown upon us that's not likely to be true in the real world going forward.
It's true. No, the MLSs are going to look a lot different. I agree. But in some capacity, though, the reason in my mind that the MLS is still important is because we do have a majority of the transactions flowing through it. So it's the closest thing we have to getting accurate real-time value, with the exception of every month pulling all of the county data.
Yes.
In certain, it is the most efficient way to do it at the moment. Yeah.
At the moment.
Transactions.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's 2:12. You gave me 15 extra minutes. I hope we helped somebody. I hope somebody enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing it.
It's fun. I think we got to do some more weeds this time. So this is good.
Yeah. When I watched the show the last time, I didn't think I talked as much as I did, but I did. And I wanted you to talk more because I think most people know what I'm thinking.
Most people know what I'm thinking too at this point. Yep.
Yeah. But it was very important to me. It's been very important with you to explain that neither one of us are really against each other in any way.
No, not at all.
It's just the way it's presented that can be confusing.
It is. There is a lot of confusion in the market right now. Even with lenders, I called 2-3 different title companies. They all think of things a little bit differently in how they're going to do it. It's there's a lot of confusion. Buyers, sellers, lenders, title companies, agents.
Yeah. So here,
Especially.
All right. Well, I'm going to check out, but I'm going to do this first there so people can see. Thank you. Thank you again for coming on.
Dude, it's so much fun. I like doing this.
Yeah, I know. So I don't know how backed up you are. You told me you had a couple buyers and stuff, but a couple weeks, come on, let's just talk about more. Let's find some more real estate fun stuff to talk about than just the NAR settlement.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we'll get into weeds on some other things too, a little less. Yeah.
Oh, that'll be fun. I do like your opinions.
I like yours too. That's how we learn, grow, and figure things out.
100%. Now you need to help me with my lead generation system, since you've worked at so many different brokerages that do stuff. So
it's actually one of the projects that I'm working on now.
You know what? I kind of know what you're doing because I kind of know the way you're thinking. So but I'll be interested to see how you let it how you roll it out. So anyway, thank you again. I will see you later. Bye,
Yes, sir.
Austin.
All right, have a good weekend. See you.
Thank you. Bye. All right, that was Austin. Look, I'm gonna steal the pulpit here and say, look, the key, if you're a buyer or a seller, okay, is that you work with agents that have some sort of brain, right? Some people that are thinking about these issues. Like, you don't want to go into a deal now and not know what the compensation is, and then agree to a deal that you can't afford to close on. That'd be the worst of the worst situations. So I'm just going to go back to like why you would want to choose an agent. Look, choose an agent that you can work with, that you like. If you don't like your agent, you're not going to have a good situation in the end. Be wary of agents that know every single thing. Those people usually get frightened and frazzled when they don't know something. And so they'll freak out. And then during the middle of a deal, freaking out is not the best way to do it. But yeah, don't let agents just tell you all a bunch of weird stuff. Maybe talk to a few agents and just get some idea of the marketplace, and then what you can do within the marketplace. We talked about strategies for both. If there's a lot of listings available, or if there aren't many listings, what market is it? A buyer, seller market? Just walk through this stuff with your agent. And with that, I'm going to head on out. Look, I've made some mistakes. One, I didn't put the stream as a video last week, so it didn't really get picked up by YouTube. Two, I couldn't get Rumble to work last week, and it kind of shook me. So we got that done. But look, if you like talking to other agents, what I'd really like to do is interview agents from all across the country and just talk about the business, and just kind of come to some agreement without heavy sales. I despise the heavy sales and the fake agents. I like to talk to real people that have real issues in the marketplace. If you'd like that, please put it in the comment section or let me know. With that, I'm going to head on out. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.